welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. I'm Bill Bryant. The Governor of the Commonwealth is with us today, Andy Beshear. It's a busy time in Frankfort with the legislature zipping through its 2025 session. The House's highest priority was an additional income tax cut. The Senate Bill 1 would create incentives for more film and media productions in Kentucky. Flooding in early February hit Kentucky hard, with loss of life and creating another brutally tough cleanup. And decisions in Washington are having a major impact on Kentucky, from program and job cuts to tariffs. President Trump says he is determined to shrink the federal government and return many decisions to the state. Governor Beshear joining us now. Welcome, sir. We appreciate you talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill.
Once again, we're dealing with a natural disaster from the February floods. There's been a federal declaration. Individual assistance is approved in some counties. Will there be enough to deal with the damage that we have?
Well, we certainly hope so. Thankfully, FEMA has come through for us. President Trump signed the necessary declarations to provide both individual assistance to qualifying families as well as public assistance to our cities, county, and state. One of the next pieces is passing another SAFE Act through the legislature that will help especially our counties and cities as they have to carry some of this burden until they'd see reimbursement from FEMA. We're also out there with the Team Kentucky Storm Relief Fund, making sure that we can ultimately pay for the 24 funerals, because we've lost 24 Kentuckians, 24 children of God, making this a really difficult, tough natural disaster. But we're tough in Kentucky. We got some of the toughest people out there, some of which have gotten hit time and time again, some 3 times since 2021. But every time you see them get back up, you see their neighbors there with them, helping them muck out their house. We're filled with really special people in Kentucky, and I know we're going to get through it and get through it together.
Requires a lot of resilience, and we're seeing it. Governor, the legislature is considering 1,080 bills this session. It's a remarkable number of things to consider. They did pass an income tax cut. Do you, and you were in favor of that, do you anticipate that the revenue will remain steady enough that that will be okay?
Well, we have seen such significant growth in our economy, and we've broken every record since I became governor, from private sector investment at $35 billion to new jobs, 60,000 of them, to best 3-year average for wages. We've broken our exports record twice, and we've broken our tourism record twice, and I think we'll break it for a 3rd consecutive year. So I believe that we would be able to provide that income tax cut, which puts more dollars in people's pockets at a time when it's hard to pay the bills at the end of the month. It would help people at times of inflation or cost increases to be able to afford groceries or gas. I thought it was really important to do right now. In the future, we're going to have to look. We're going to have to look at where revenue is, and I think it's going to get tighter and tighter about whether we can make those cuts in the future. But I'm glad we did this, because while we at the state level are putting more dollars in people's pockets to make it easier at the end of the month, we're seeing a lot coming out of Washington, D.C., including tariffs on Mexico and Canada that are going to raise the cost of so many goods for Kentuckians. And I'll tell you, I call that the Trump tax, because it is one individual, President Trump, who's making those decisions. The tariff on Canada is going to raise the price of gasoline. The amount it raises that price is the Trump tax. The tariff on Mexico is going to raise the price of groceries. The amount they increase is the Trump tax. And the tariff on lumber is going to make housing that much harder, which is already so hard in Lexington and the surrounding communities. That extra cost is the Trump tax. And again, it's because it's his decision and his decision alone. My goal is not to be partisan, but to be factual, and so that the people of Kentucky can raise their voices and say, we voted to lower prices, not raise them.
Governor, are you hearing from a lot of industries and business people who have their concerns about the tariffs and hope that there's something you can do?
Yes, all across Kentucky. I'm hearing especially tariffs on Canada being really unpopular. Now, we have about $47 billion of exports every year in Kentucky. About 23% go to Canada. This is our best trading partner, and they are a close ally of the United States. They've been one of our closest friends as a country. And what's happening right now with them being threatened and kicked in the teeth by our country. There are a lot of us out there and a lot of Kentuckians from both parties that are really uncomfortable with this and see the harm that it's already causing. Look at our bourbon industry, where not only is there a counter tariff, which means less will be purchased, but in some provinces, they're taking it out of the liquor stores entirely. That means people are going to lose their jobs. That means farmers aren't going to be able to sell as much corn. It means the truck drivers that are transporting it aren't going to have as much work. And that's just one. Look at Martin Rea on the auto industry. This is a Canadian company where parts go from Canada to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, to Mexico and back. If these tariffs are ultimately put on the auto industry in a company like that, it's going to hurt our exports. It's going to hurt our economy. It's already hitting the stock market. Consumer confidence is going down. Listen, these tariffs are a really bad idea. And don't take my word for it. Mitch McConnell also says it, and Rand Paul says it. So, Bill, you know Kentucky politics. If our two Republican senators and our Democratic governor all think something's a bad idea, it's because it's a bad idea.
All right, Governor, you've pressed your case on that. As you know, the president says some of the tariffs are to keep fentanyl out of the country and Kentucky, and we've paid a huge price, as we know, here in Kentucky with that. Is it worth the tariffs to try to address that issue?
Oh, we can work with our neighbors to reduce the amount of fentanyl coming in without raising prices on our people. And remember, fentanyl is incredibly dangerous, and we've got to do everything we can to reduce it while still supporting our families. But it's those pill mills and ultimately opioids that led us to the addiction crisis that we're in today. What I have faith in is our people who work in the treatment community and in the recovery community. You know, here in Kentucky, we're one of the only states that can say our drug overdose deaths have gone down 2 years in a row. But, Bill, let me mention another threat coming out of D.C., and that's the potential for Medicaid cuts. So much of recovery services in Kentucky are funded by Medicaid. We do not want to step back. In addition, the people we love the most are our parents and our kids. Half of Kentucky's kids are covered by Medicaid. 70% of long-term care costs are covered. If we see major cuts coming out of Congress, rural health care will be decimated, and people will have to drive several hours just to see the same doctor. I'm going to do everything I can to push back, not because I'm a Democratic governor, but because I'm the governor of Kentucky, and my job is to do everything I can to support our people.
Governor, if there are Medicaid cuts, or if it is changed in the way it is the money is sent to Kentucky, such as if it's a block grant or something like that, are you prepared to call a special legislative session if federal changes might deem that necessary?
Well, I don't want to speculate about exactly how they would do it and the total hit that we would take, but the level of cuts that are potential out there are so devastating that it would probably require changes in a significant number of Kentucky laws. And while you have some people out there talking about Medicaid in a negative way, this legislature and every legislature before it for years has typically added to coverage certain things that need to be covered. And I support a lot of that. But remember, these are people adding coverage that are Republican, Democrat, and otherwise. It's just so much of our health care goes through this system. And in Kentucky, we need to get our people healthier, not reduce their access, especially in rural Kentucky.
As you know, there is no budget plan at this time, and there are no cuts that are on paper at this time. So it's something that people are watching the potential for. The Department of Education may be eliminated. The president wants to do that. Would that potentially require some legislation to deal with how the state would move forward on education?
I think it would depend on the federal action and legislation and what it does. Certainly during the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of the federal legislation that was passed sent things directly to governors that we were then able to work directly throughout the Commonwealth to provide different services. So we'll see what they're doing in education. Here's what people need to remember, though. A significant portion of special education is funded through the U.S. Department of Education. And certainly any type of block grants that they send us need to come without any strings if that's what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, the U.S. Department of Education needs to be fixed, not broken or eliminated. Public education in this country is too important. And the people of Kentucky spoke loud and clear on their desire to invest more in public education when they defeated Amendment 2 by 30 points last November.
Among the policy changes in Washington, there appears to be less emphasis on EVs, and a plant in Hopkinsville is scaling back some. The Blue Oval SK plants in Hardin County are going to be economic drivers. That was your goal, but is that going to continue to be the case with less of a government push for use of electric vehicles?
Yeah, the uptake on EVs is going to continue. You know, the fourth quarter of last year was one of the best we've seen, and virtually none of the vehicles qualified for the credits that are at least rumored to be on the chopping block. There weren't that many chargers out there. We still need to do more and better on that, and the costs that are predicted to come way down hadn't happened yet. So we see growth in the EV market that is indisputable, and while growth is never linear, what we are seeing and what we will see is an inflection point, I think, where the uptake is significantly greater. And just think, if the price of gas goes up because of these tariffs, and it will, especially for families with two cars, one EV will make a lot of sense. EVs are the future, and a lot of people have tried to fight the future, but no one's ever won. So for the future of our auto industry, I'm very excited and very grateful that these companies making batteries chose us, chose Kentucky. It's going to mean throughout the industry we have all these jobs for years to come.
Governor, back to Frankfort, and the legislative session is continuing, and several items have passed. Others are pending. Many more are pending than have passed. Senate Bill 1 creates a film office and other ways to boost Kentucky as a place for feature productions. Do you agree with that priority?
Well, our film industry has taken off. I just opened Kentucky Soundstage in Owensboro, which is a state-of-the-art facility for people to be able to film and make their movies in Kentucky. They've already attracted a number of films in that location. A bunch of great groups in Lexington, in Louisville, you know, the Wrigley Group, and the work it's doing is just phenomenal. And these groups think that this will help. I will say that the Cabinet for Economic Development has done a fantastic job in administering this program, making sure that anything we provide incentives to lifts up Kentucky and is real and helps our long-term employment. This will replace some of that with a board, but it's one that I appoint. And so I'll take who we put on that very seriously and make sure we continue to move forward. I think all the authors have the best interest of the Commonwealth in mind. I just want to make sure if we're changing something that works, what we're changing it to works just as well.
DEI legislation appears to be making its way through, particularly those aimed at higher education, and it looks like there's a bill as well for K through 12. Do you anticipate signing DEI legislation?
Well, we'll see what makes it through. 2 years ago, Kentucky was #1 in the country in our increases in post-secondary enrollment. In other words, in more people going to college. And a lot of that was an effort to reach out to communities where not enough people have gone to college. It's in many ways a business case that you make to a university that says if you need more students, where do you go? You go to areas and to populations that haven't sent enough students. So certainly any bill that comes through shouldn't prevent direct recruitment for our public universities when we see that it's working for them and it's working for the Commonwealth. But let me also say this DEI has been a scapegoat that people have attempted to blame for so many different things, and to take words that should be viewed positively. Diversity makes us better. Having diverse backgrounds at the table, we get better results. You think about inclusion, something we're taught about in kindergarten, just making sure that everyone has opportunity that's out there. We need to make sure that those lessons and those words that are all mentioned over and over in my faith we don't just think about on Sunday. We think about every other day in the week, too.
As you look at the legislature and watch what they're doing right now, are there things you see that you want to see passed, and are there things that you stand ready with a veto pen?
Well, there's a current bill that in 2026, as written, would cut about $1.5 billion out of our Medicaid program. We can't let that happen. That'll harm our kids. That'll harm our seniors. It'll harm employment in rural Kentucky. That same bill suggests decisions of coverage will be made by the General Assembly. I don't know what their aim is, but it would mean if a new drug came on the market that could really help us. There's a non-opioid pain reliever that just came out, that the General Assembly would have to make that decision, meaning you'd have to wait until a session starts, and then 130-something people would have to debate it instead of experts in the field and ultimately looking at the finances that are in it. One of my main pushes, though, isn't this year, it's next year. If our Commonwealth truly wants to grasp our potential, we must fund universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds. Other states, red states, blue states, are doing it. They recognize that you can't have what we have, 54% of our children not being kindergarten ready. And it's the number one thing we can do to boost our workforce. And for young parents, it'll save you about $13,000 that year in child care costs. This is a no-brainer that should have never gotten political, but I think what you'll see is business stepping forward, saying this is our number one ask in this next budget session.
Governor, you have said you are not running for Senator McConnell's seat when it opens next year. We do see you continue your efforts to become better known outside Kentucky. Can we assume that your interest is on a national office in 2028?
Well, I have two goals right now. Number one is to be the best governor I can be. And in this time of great uncertainty nationally and elsewhere, it has 100% of my attention. And my pledge is not to be the best Democratic governor I can be, but just to be the best governor for our people. And that means focusing on jobs, health care, infrastructure, public education, and public safety, things that lift everyone up. And then I'm the vice chair, and next year the chair of the Democratic Governors Association, where I'll have about 36 races. So want to make sure that we elect good people. Because the populations of other states deserve good governance as well, with leaders focused on those things that can help every single American.
Do you think Democrats can field a competitive Senate candidate in Kentucky in 2026?
I do. I think that there are some folks out there that could run really strong.
What do you see happening in Kentucky in the weeks ahead? Let's hope that we continue to get these natural disasters behind us, and that there aren't others, and it soon will be Derby season and all of that. So hope springs eternal, I guess, this time of year, right?
Well, the first thing I hope is that we don't have much more snow or any other natural disasters, that it warms up and people can get outside with their family and enjoy. I think what they can see is us continuing to push our economy forward. Obviously these tariffs are a big concern, not just in prices, but could it stall the best momentum we've ever had in our lifetime? My job as governor is not to accept any excuse, and whatever's out there, to just do my best to push through it, to continue to bring new opportunities. We just learned that we made the top 5 again in per capita economic development in the country. That means the top 5 in every year I've been governor, 5 years straight. So that's exciting. And so my goal is to make sure that as we move in the months ahead, that we see more wins for our people. And we've waited a long time to get our share, to be a leader. And now's our time, and I'm not going to let anything stop us.
Final question. If people are interested or in need of accessing flood relief, it's always, it becomes available, and then but folks have to know about it and apply for it. What should they do?
Well, we have online, you can see all of the disaster recovery centers that FEMA has set up, and then it has all the other federal agencies and the state agencies. You can go to the FEMA website, you can call their hotline, you can go on their app, but going into one of these centers and talking to people will help you put the best application you can together. And then don't stop and don't quit. If they initially deny you, it happened a lot after the floods, and you know what? We provided extra help to people, but they decided they weren't going to take no for an answer, and we made a lot of great changes, demanded them to FEMA that have then helped people in every natural disaster since. So go to that disaster recovery center, and anybody out there who wants to help. There are a lot of great charities. I know WKYT works with one. Also consider the Team Kentucky Storm Relief Fund. Just make sure if you can, you help, because these are our neighbors. They've been knocked down again, but with our help, they'll get right back up.
Governor, thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. We appreciate it very much and your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll be back on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. This week, Kentucky marked 5 years since the state reported its first confirmed case of COVID-19. The state's very first case was in Cynthiana, and the patient was a 27-year-old woman named Julia Donahue, who came down with flu-like symptoms that rapidly got worse. She spent 13 days in the hospital, and 4 of those on a ventilator. At a ceremony to mark the anniversary, Governor Beshear held a bell ringing at the state capitol. He recognized the memorial on Capitol grounds that remembers those who were lost, along with the heroes and the sacrifices that helped save so many Kentucky lives.
That memorial stands as a monument to the now more than 20,400 Kentucky victims of this virus, more than 20,400 children of God taken from us in such a short period of time. It also reminds us of the daily heroism that fighting a once-in-a-generation worldwide pandemic required.
Nationwide, the CDC says COVID-19 contributed to the deaths of 1.2 million people. The worst of the spikes came in December of 2020 and January of 2021. When Kentuckians learned that the state had its first known case, the big question that many were asking then was where? Well, that case was in Harrison County. Health leaders often reflect on that day on the anniversary of COVID here in the Commonwealth. And as WKYT's Mariah Congito reports, it was a time that no one will forget.
It is somehow both shocking that it was 5 years ago, because it feels 50 years ago, and 5 seconds ago.
March 6, 2020.
Where was this case? What was this? What did this mean for Kentucky?
A new virus was now in the Commonwealth. It popped up in small town Cynthiana.
Fortunately, this first one wasn't in Lexington. Unfortunately, 2 days later, Lexington had its first case.
Julia Donahue was in her 20s at the time.
At that point, I didn't even know what COVID was.
Donahue was the state's first COVID-19 patient. WKYT's Amber Philpott sat down with her on the 1-year anniversary.
When he said that, I was just like, I don't know what that is. What does that mean?
Donahue spent 13 days in the hospital, 4 on a ventilator. From there, things spiraled and tens of thousands of Kentuckians would receive the same diagnosis.
People were unaware of what would happen. Did this mean a death sentence? Did this mean long-term impact?
Kevin Hall with the Lexington-Fayette County Health Department says the work between the local health departments, cities, hospital staff, and state was crucial, even though they themselves didn't have all the answers.
We may not have known the particulars about COVID-19, but public health was ready for this type of pandemic.
Later that year, when the vaccine rolled out, health departments played a huge role in administering it to the masses.
We have 300,000 plus people that we are responsible for.
Many, like Donahue, survived, but many didn't. COVID-19 contributed to the deaths of more than 20,000 Kentuckians.
Here in Lexington, more than 800 people have died because of COVID-19 and complications.
Hall says even amidst the hardest of times, people really saw some of the best of humanity.
People checking on others, making sure that their neighbors were provided for.
In Lexington, Mariah Congito, WKYT.
All right, stay with us in just a moment. Companies coming to Lexington, we'll tell you about that before we go on Kentucky Newsmakers. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Lexington will soon be hosting the KHSAA Boys and Girls Sweet 16 and the first round of the men's NCAA basketball tournament. Many Lexington business owners are hoping that this will bring a big economic boost to the area. WKYT's Jessica Umbro and photojournalist Darnell Crenshaw talked with a downtown restaurant owner who has had mid-March really marked on his calendar since last fall.
Lexington is tuning up for basketball fans. Rupp Arena is ready to host, and Jim Sawyer is ready to serve. It's all about technique.
So I go around the side, I go underneath,
He owns Sawyer's Downtown, a popular burger spot on Main Street, for 41 years. Sawyer's had mid-March circled on his calendar since last October.
Talking about the busyness of March with Girls 316, Boys 316.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a busy month.
He knows basketball fanatics will patronize and flip his cheeseburgers into cash.
If I took away basketball and I did a month's sales, basketball will double that. You know, I'm going to pay a lot of bills off with the money that's going to come through this.
But wait, before basketball, there are other events coming to town.
Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, Comic-Con,
Yep.
and then pro bull riding.
Yep.
Which aren't you doing the pro bull riding?
Oh yeah, clearly.
Wallace Reed is a frequent customer.
Oh, I think it's going to be a big boost. There's going to be a lot of people downtown. Going to be a lot of people shopping. Going to be a lot of people going to the restaurant.
And that's music to the ear for Visit Lex.
So we hope that people come, they see us, they want to come back, they want to take a horse farm tour, they want to come back for Keeneland in April.
For Sawyer, a bonus of basketball, burgers, and business could equate to a double cheeseburger.
This would be a triple cheeseburger. Good analogy.
In Lexington, with photojournalist Darnell Crenshaw, Jessica Umbro, WKYT.
And in a statement, Mayor Linda Gorton says the city is expecting to see a potential $10 million impact from hosting these events. So really a whole lot going on. And of course, we welcome the crowds to Lexington. Well, that's Kentucky Newsmakers. We thank you so much for joining us. Invite you to join us for WKYT News as we continue to cover the legislative session and Kentucky news. Have a good week ahead.